Inherit. Al, a middle-aged, stout man with a kind demeanor, was sitting with his head bent over, engrossed in something inside his restaurant. The restaurant, located in the middle of town, had been established since 1976, back when he was just 25 years old. It was closing time now. Lena, one of the regular employees, watched him as she cleaned the restaurant and asked, "Do you need any help? You've been at it for a while. Would you like something to drink?" Al, focused and determined, was wiping, scrubbing, and prying at something. With a gentle and kind voice, he replied, "No, thank you, my dear. You should head home, your husband will be worried. I'll take care of the rest." Lena smiled and responded, "He won't mind. He admires you a lot. He once asked me if I had ever seen you angry or doing something bad because no one in this town has anything bad to say about you. Besides, he's coming to pick me up soon." Just then, Frame, Al's old friend who ran a carving shop nearby, walked into the restaurant and greeted Lena, "Hello, beautiful. You're looking even more lovely today." Lena smiled and replied, "Hello, Frame. You're here quite late today." "Well, it's that mischievous friend of mine. He called me up saying he had something to show me." "Where's Al? I'm dying to see what it is. I had to leave my wife at home and rush over." Lena laughed, "He's over there in the corner." Frame grinned and immediately walked over to Al. "Hey, buddy, what do you have to show me?" Al looked up from what he was doing and said, "Here it is, what I wanted to show you," as he handed Frame a material that looked like an old iron rod wrapped in hardened stone fragments. "I found this while I was out walking in the stone forest outside town." Frame's eyes widened. "The stone forest, the old Native American burial ground?" "Yes," Al replied. "I stumbled upon it when a lightning bolt struck a rock about 20 meters away from me. It was a bright, sunny day, no sign of rain. When I went to check, I saw this sticking out of the ground. The red at the tip caught my eye, so I picked it up. By the way, Frame, did you bring your tools?" The two friends then began using Frame's tools to carefully remove the hard soil and debris that covered the object. After some time, they finally managed to reveal what was hidden inside. Al wiped the sweat from his brow and examined the knife closely. "This is an ancient iron knife, Frame, and there's a bright red stone embedded in the handle. Do you think it's a valuable gem?" Frame looked into his friend's eyes. "The knife alone is worth a fortune, but if that red stone is a real gem, we're going to be rich." Al stared at the knife, his face glowing faintly with the red light from the stone. "This knife is mine, not yours, Frame," Al said, his voice suddenly growing harsh, his expression darkening. Frame was taken aback. In all the nearly 40 years he had known Al, he had never seen his friend look or sound like this. "Al, calm down. I didn't mean it that way. You found it, so it's yours." At that moment, Lena walked over with some cold drinks, placing them in front of the two men. "Have something to drink and calm down, boys. Al, may I see the knife?" Al glared at her and snapped, "I won't let anyone touch this knife, no matter who they are." Seeing the situation turning tense, Frame quickly stepped between Al and Lena. "Al, what's gotten into you? This isn't like you." Al, realizing what he had just done, began to tremble. He sat down and started crying in distress. "Oh, Frame, I'm sorry." "Lena, dear, I'm sorry too." Frame and Lena exchanged puzzled looks. Frame walked over to the phone. He needed to call Al's wife and discuss what to do next. As he turned his back on Al and Lena and spoke to Al's wife about what had happened, he felt something bump into him. He turned around and saw Lena collapsing to the floor, her hand rigidly clutching the phone he had been using. The phone cord snapped as she fell, and to his horror, he saw Al holding the knife, now covered in blood. Al looked at Frame. "Frame, I didn't do it. I swear I didn't do it." The knife it moved by itself towards Lena. "I couldn't stop my hand." With that, Al let out a scream and ran out of the restaurant. Frame leaped to stop him, and in the ensuing struggle, the knife fell out of Al's hand. Both men stared at the knife lying on the ground, and Al screamed again before running out of his restaurant. Frame, regaining his composure, rushed to the phone to call the police, but the phone was damaged and unusable. He checked Lena's pulse and shook his head sadly. Poor girl, this shouldn't have happened. He then turned his attention to the knife, his eyes fixated on the gem in the handle. He grabbed a cloth from the floor, wrapped the knife in it, and hurried out of the restaurant. He quickly returned to his house, just 2 blocks away, and went down to the basement. He needed to call the police and explain everything that had happened, including why he had to call from his home. He would also tell them his name and address. But before the police arrived, he had 5 minutes to deal with that gem. If the police asked why he took the knife, he would say he was afraid Al might come back and destroy the evidence. Frame thought, how much could this be worth? I could take my wife and start a new life in a better town. He began using his tools to pry the gem from the knife's handle. But with the handle still wet, he slipped and accidentally cut himself. His face began to turn red, just as Al's had. His eyes hardened, and the blood from his hand made it even more difficult to extract the gem. He roared in frustration. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice. Frame, what are you doing? It was his wife. She had heard him come home and had been surprised when he disappeared, so she came down to check. Frame gripped the knife tightly and replied harshly, I just came back from Al's restaurant. Al did something terrible. You go back upstairs, I'm calling the police. The phones at Al's place are all broken, so I had to call from home. His wife looked at him with concern and walked towards him. Frame, what did you do? Why is there blood all over you? Frame shouted at her, his voice loud, as a red haze began to fill the room. Get out of here, you stupid woman, he yelled at her. I told you not to interfere. Frame, what are you doing? His wife asked, her voice choking as red liquid began to pour from her mouth. Frame looked up and screamed in pure horror. His hand was at her stomach, driving the knife into her again and again. This is how it happened, Chief, Sergeant Dom reported to his superior. Someone found this knife at the old Native American burial ground outside town. It was used to kill 2 women by 2 different men in less than half an hour. Both men said that when they held the knife, they felt a burning sensation in their arm, lost control of their emotions, and couldn't stop themselves from using it. The chief listened with a grim expression. Lucy, did you record all of that? He asked the station's clerk. And that red gem, what is it? It's a diamond, sir, Dom replied. A red diamond. The chief's eyes narrowed as he muttered, blood of Wendigo. What was that, sir? Dom asked, puzzled. The chief didn't answer and instead ordered, no one is to touch that knife, especially the red diamond, with their bare hands. Understood. Then he walked away. Dom looked at Lucy, what's gotten into the chief, talking about Wendigos, those Indian demons? He laughed, removed his gloves, and reached for the knife. As soon as he felt the heat spreading from his hand to his arm, Lucy scolded him, Dom, don't disobey the chief. Put it down now. She laughed and reached out to grab Dom's arm. Dom turned towards the sound, his face and eyes filled with murderous intent. He shouted loudly and lunged at Lucy.